So what does it really mean to outsource? What does global resourcing really mean? But more importantly, once you find those resources, how do you actually leverage technology and digital to get more customers, to improve the customer experience, to take care of everything through your entire chain of business? And that's what this episode is going to be about.
Welcome to Fordify Live with your host, Ford Saeks.
And to help explore this topic in more detail is a colleague. He's an EO member, an EO leader. I've participated in a forum weekly, and he runs the forum and development and using AI and outsourcing. I said, you know what? I'd love to see if I can get him as a guest. He's carved time out of his schedule. So Ankit Patel, welcome to today's episode of Fordify Live.
Thanks for having me, Ford. I appreciate it.
So, this global resourcing, we talked a little bit in the green room, organizations right now are struggling to try to find, attract, and engage key employees. So they're looking for different ways to outsource. And, outsourcing, some people either love it or they hate it and they don't know what it means and they've had great experiences, but you've really mastered it, not only for your own businesses, but also to help your clients. Tell us a little bit about how did you get into this and where did you find the strengths to actually outsource effectively, I guess is the key.
Yeah, I think not knowing any better was probably the reason why I was able to keep doing this and effectively. So our origin story is my wife's an optometrist and I am not a doctor, but I help her run the practices. And at the time we had, I think either 4 or 5 locations, and we were starting to have struggles with, and this is right before COVID, like late 2019. And we were having struggles with consistency around making appointments and staffing, being spread out over 5 locations. It gets tough to have that all consistent. And so we decided to centralize that function. And when we did, we said, you know what, we're not confined to just our 4 walls. So most of the staff is going to be our existing employees that we just bring to one location. But we do have staff who were outside the country that were supporting and helping us as well. And so fast forward a little bit, COVID hits, and our existing staff, we try to keep them on board, but for one reason or another, they didn't stay on board. And so we expanded that team as we went. And over the course of 3 or 4 years, we kind of honed in on how to find the right person, how to train them, dealing with cultural differences and expectations. And to where now, last year, we launched my business care team, which is helping optometrists and other businesses with phone answering, admin tasks, and specifically around billing and filing and accounts receivable. So it was a long journey to kind of get to this point. We had a lot of learnings, but yeah, it was definitely a ride.
So as a successful entrepreneur, what I find is, people say, well, the way to success is to find a need and fill it. And I'm like, well, people don't do what they need. So I think it's if you find a want and fill it, it's more successful. And so you took that expertise and you were able to outsource. And I know there are a lot of companies that do it. One of the colleagues I worked with, I don't think he's an EO member, I can't remember, but My Outdesk is a company that I've had some success with. They were accent neutral. There were things that I could do where I had them, but what was nice about their system is I was able to invest and then they would vet the person working on the team, whether it was for customer experience or social media or admin, whatever the role was. I know a lot of companies have tried to outsource, but it's hard to necessarily keep them accountable. I mean, I've got a few virtual staff right now, and I just met with them in the team meeting this morning, and it's like, I'm a driver. I'm a type A. I'm a visionary. I'm not the integrator. I have to have other smart people around me to get things done. And my problem in the past with outsourcing, Ankit, is I delegated without details, and I didn't hold them accountable. So when it failed, I don't know if it was because I didn't do it properly or because we didn't do it. With what you've done. So I want to learn more about, my business care team. So you're going after optometrists and you're providing a service for them so that their phones are answered and they're actually setting appointments and creating that customer experience. Is that right?
Absolutely. And I can definitely tell you, so we're also, one nuanced difference here that most people don't know or realize is there's VA companies and there's BPOs. And we fall more into the BPO bucket. So a VA company would deliver you a body. You have to train, you have to provide the infrastructure,
right.
You have to provide the management and all that. We will extract that information from you and manage to metrics. So if whether we need 1 person or 20 people on the task, we'll price it accordingly based off what we think. And then we'll deliver to certain metrics, usually a productivity, a quality, and a service level type metric on whatever the task is.
Well, that makes so much more sense. And I know that's why you've been successful when you're doing it. And I also know that you've been leveraging technology and you've digitized a lot of things. I mean, I do a lot of presentations and keynotes on AI, and of course, anybody now with a laptop is an AI expert, right? Anybody who's used ChatGPT or Perplexity or Copilot or Gemini, they're all experts. But there's a difference between using it as a party trick to write, a simple prompt and a simple response than it is a workflow. And I know that you've really mastered workflows. And so I'd love to have you share anything about how you digitize. It can be related to your business or just what you've learned about technology, because the organizations today, they fall under three buckets, right? So there's operations, leadership and management, and finance. There's marketing and sales bucket, and then there's the customer experience bucket. So AI can be used across the gamut, but every time we're on those masterminds at the forum, I'm like, oh, I'm writing all these down, and I'm like, oh, this is so smart. So where did you get your passion for AI? And then what are some of the workflows, or what do you think our listeners could do to start really taking it to the next level?
Yeah. So one of my strengths is probably around problem solving. And what I would say is that, for me, in my mind, I have to create how does AI fit into the rest of the picture, right? Like, what is it good at? What kind of problems can it solve? And then I kind of work backwards from there. So from what I can tell, most AIs, at least as of the recording of this video with large language models like GPT-4 and Opus and all those, they're really good at what I call end-to-end and one-to-end type problems. So those are problems like, hey, I want one-to-end type problem is create itinerary for me to 3-day itinerary for trip to Paris. And okay, yes, it'll spit out something, it'll look good. And because there's a lot of different ways you could generate a really good itinerary. So there's not like one absolute answer. An end-to-end problem is something like, hey, I don't know, I want to make a better world for my kids. Where do I start? Right. And that's also another great place that AI can help and leverage, and these large language models, at least. One-to-end is a little tougher. So when you have something like, say, for instance, I have a document and I need to know if legally I can do X, Y, and Z. AI is not the best. It's getting better in that realm, but the large language models don't really do a super great job where I would feel comfortable relying on that 100%. And so knowing that, I kind of take that and say, what are the tasks that are more one-to-end or end-to-end type questions? And so we've used it a lot in training and development. So assessing people's knowledge and skills. So we've learned how to write a rubric. And so we've automated the workflow where we have open-ended answers that they submit answers to, and it'll actually score them and say like, well, you're not quite right because you're missing some connection pieces. There's some contextual knowledge you're missing. And it's great for giving feedback and seeing where people know things and where they don't know things. And so that's really helpful. Another area where we use it is in our hiring process. So
right.
It does not eliminate or disqualify anyone, right? So, and I know there's a lot of regulatory relations, state to state, country to country. Yeah. So
full disclaimer, I'm going to interrupt you. This is for educational and informational purposes only. If you love the episode, thank us. If you don't like the episode, tough crap, come talk to me. But I'm glad you're talking about this story, because this is something you shared with our group, which I thought was so interesting, that you were able to improve the hiring process. So I'm going to put the mic back to you.
Yeah. So our staff, most of the staff, we have a global team, but most of the phone agents come from the Philippines. And so what we do is we have a software that we've developed that will take a resume and it'll score it based off the job function and the deliverables. And then it generates questions to ask the person. So behavior-based type questions. So one of the call agents positions is, they need customer service and dealing with upset patients or upset clients or customers. And so we look for that in their resume experience. If they don't list it out, it'll generate questions like, tell me about a time you've had to deal with an upset customer. How'd you deal with it? And now we've developed out a AI voice bot that actually calls them and to gather that information so we get a better picture of their actual work experience. And so it actually rescores them and says, okay, well, this person's probably a better fit than we thought initially based off the resume. And so it's nice to kind of go through that first round of just sorting through who are the best candidates to hire. In addition to that, we also do other things like psychometric testing and personality testing and cognitive testing, which we find is also helpful for finding the right people for the right job.
But you're applying those AI tools within that workflow, and that's what I think is so important, is that you're scaling things that are duplicatable. So when I work with AI and I, as a strategic coach and I work with an organization, I talk about layering, right? It's not just a prompt and in this, it's actually a layer. We're going to build a series of questions to help train whatever AI program you're using, whatever your flavor of the day is. And I typically will take things into different ones. I'll go to Gemini and I'll do some things. I'll go to Claude 3 and I'll do that there. I'll do it on ChatGPT. And because I do get different answers, but I found that layering is really important. And then those workflows, getting data in and out of other programs. We use Zapier a lot to help create the zaps. Zapier has that really cool feature now where you can just describe what you're trying to do, and then it actually gives you the answer, where before you had to kind of know what you're doing. So I know that they're improving. I think that one of the things you mentioned was, text to speech, where you're having it actually talk to the candidate to ask them questions. I know that right now, like my introduction video that I just played, my little stinger for the show, that's AI. So I'm only going to play just a couple seconds of it.
Welcome to Fordify Live with your host, Ford.
So that voice is all AI driven. I was going to go pay a voiceover person, but I went to Murph, I took the script, picked a voice, got it. And I'm like, done is more profitable than perfect. I'm going to do that. Now I've also tried to use AI to convert voice, but what I found, and you tell me if this is what your experience is, I found that when it converts to voice, it has to go from hearing it to text and then converting it back into voice. And so I think that conversion, there's a little lag and delay so you can actually tell that you're talking to AI. I think that's going to get solved pretty quickly in the next maybe weeks or months. But how is that working for you in your workflow? Do the candidates know they're talking to automation, or does it actually simulate a real person?
So this is my personal view. Everyone has a different view. In my mind, I think you should tell people that you're talking to AI. So we say you would have an AI bot up front.
Yep.
Everyone has different opinions on it, which is completely fine. I'm not judging one way or the other. I just feel like that's the appropriate thing to do, because in a long enough conversation, you will be able to tell, because the slight inflections in the voice, the interruption is not quite there. But I can tell you that the platform we use is very fast. That's why we picked it. And so it's called Bland.ai. And we are, if you reach out to them, tell them I sent you. So
spell it out for the listeners, because this video production also becomes the audio track for the Business Growth Show. So go ahead and spell it out for you.
Yep. Bland is BLAND.ai.
Got it. So Bland.ai, just like it sounds. And so tell them, if you go there, this is Ankit Patel. It's ANKIT Patel. He's the founder of My BCAT. So and then the letter B, My BCAT, which is really my business care team. So you can find him on LinkedIn, and he's pretty busy. So don't just come out, ask him random questions or anything. But so you're using Bland, and Bland has been the tool that you've been able, because a lot of people say, well, what's the best tool? And I always say, like you said, start with the end in mind. There's thousands of tools that can do things. They're all based on those large language models. But it's not about the tool. It's about what's going to help you solve the problem. Yeah,
exactly. And then, we picked them for, there's a handful of platforms out there that all have pros and cons.
Right.
We picked them because specifically of their responsiveness, their support, and their platform is a pretty good one. It's good enough, right? It's done is better than perfect.
Yeah.
And so we're able to actually put in solutions, and they have some pretty unique features, like conversational pathways that make inbound calling a lot easier for us. So for instance, within the next week or two, we're going to be launching an after hours AI bot that'll actually take our patient calls at our offices as a test, and to see, hey, if it's an emergency, we're going to go ahead and transfer you to the emergency office that you need to talk to right away. And we can sort that out. If it's not an emergency, well, we can either get you scheduled next day with us, or we can just take a message and we'll call you back the next day. Right. So some simple things like that, but patients never feel like they're left out in the dark. And it can also make appointments. So overnight, if we get an appointment for just a vision exam, which is not an emergency, it can take care of that. So those are types of use cases that it works great for.
Well, I know that, I run a digital marketing company, and, for years, we had chatbots on sites, but they were archaic. It was basically just a fancy, like we've talked about, autocomplete, right? You put a prompt in, it looks up the database and it gives you a prompt. It's not really AI. It's just answering prompts. And I had those involved on a lot of websites for years. And we took them off a lot of the websites because they became a barrier. They didn't actually work. And there's some companies that, certainly do better than others. But I think for us, it was taking the time to train it. And now, I have two main websites. I have my business website at primeconcepts.com, and then the speaking site at profitrichresults.com. Well, I want to add an AI chatbot because I'm speaking about AI, but it's like, I don't know which one to use now because there's chat.ai and there's all these other ones, and so I'm like, I better get my crap together. I almost said something else, I don't have my button right in front of me. Let's see if I can find it. There we go. I better get it together because I want it to work, but I just don't want the AI bot to go off the rails and start saying things that aren't relevant. Like for me, I speak on business growth and leadership and local marketing and sales. Well, I don't want the chatbot to say, yes, he does DEI or something that's just not something I do. So have you had any experience programming or any companies or anybody you've worked with for how to create an intelligent chatbot that can be done on the website? And then I want to go back to the answering the phone thing.
So, and I feel like I should work for this company, but Bland.ai, like I said, another reason why we chose them is they have conversational pathways that you can set deterministic flow paths.
That's what I need to do then.
It'll stay within those constraints, and you can apply that to either voice, chat, or text flow. So it's more of an omni-channel approach. So it's kind of nice that you can do it. Now you do have to have some developer skills to do that.
Sure.
If you don't have any developer skills, I don't know if platforms out there. I know there's another one that's free. It's called Flowwise. You just got to host it yourself. It's off of GitHub, Flowwise AI, and it has some built-in functions that prevent that. And also you can write prompts to kind of mitigate that. But that's always a concern. You're right. Is it going to go off the rails on me?
And I know that, setting appointments are so important. The response time. I've said this on other episodes of Fordify Live. My wife has a business. We were trying to get fence quotes. And so she called up, 7 companies and only like 1 or 2 called her back. And then they didn't even show up for the appointment to quote the job. I've got some lawn work I was trying to get done, and, same thing, the response. And I think that with home services or even the business services, like what you provide, what your clients provide for optometry, is just answering the phone, setting the appointment, following up. It's just that speed to deliver quickly. And I think that what you're offering with My Business Care Team is so essential, and the organizations may not know they need it until they get it. It's kind of like anything else. You don't think you need it until you get it, and then you realize I can't live without it, because it's actually providing a critical resource.
It's interesting. I usually tell people this is that you don't outsource for the sake of because everyone else is doing it, because it's cool, right? It's like, oh, they're doing it, so I should do it. There should be one of 3 areas that it should affect, right? It should either help you increase revenue, decrease your cost directly, or there's a strategic advantage of doing it. And so what I'll say is, and there's usually a combination of those 3. What I see a lot of times though, people are like, well, we have all these tasks that we need. Let's just go ahead and have a VA do them, like do all this paperwork in the back end. But when someone leaves, we replace them, and we still have the same amount of headcount. Now we have extra cost, and it's not giving us a noticeable difference in patient or customer experience. Why are you doing it, right? You're just increasing your cost without an effective outcome. So, looking at, is it going to help me increase sales because now I can hire a better sales agent? I can pay better structure because I have outsourced some of the back office and paying less there. And it's because I've reduced my cost structure. Or is it strategic because this is a pretty highly critical task for the day workflow? And if we lose someone, retraining someone on this takes forever. It takes a long time. And we're paying like in optometry offices, typically $15 to $20 something an hour, which nowadays, depending on the part of the country, that's not even a great wage to live on, even at 25 in some places. And so it's like, okay, you're going to have turnover in those positions. And so, and it's hard to find stability. And so if you have a critical task that you need to check on certain things for patients, like their insurance, their previous medical conditions, things like that, it's helpful to have someone that's stable, that can deliver on that work without having to go and pay 30-40% more than you normally would for a person in office.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the same thing. If you're asking the wrong question, the answer doesn't matter. And I think the real key is, how do you scale? I know for me, in a keynote, people will say, well, how do you grow a business? Well, there's only really 4 ways. Get more high value clients, increase the average transaction, increase repeat or referral sales, or like you're talking about, improve operational performance. So how can you be more efficient to duplicate the repetitive tasks using technology? Because I think that's the only reason I care about AI. It's not, oh, I'm fascinated by AI and I want to talk to you about how large language model, like some things will make you smarter, but they won't make you any more money, right? It's or add value. I mean, it's always add value, make a profit. And I just look at how can I apply these tools effectively. You know, I'm doing a lot right now with HeyGen is a program that I like to use because the model has been good. There's lots of other ones that can translate different languages, but I got hired to go speak in Montreal. They wanted the presentation in French, a virtual presentation recorded, and they wanted English with French subtitles. And I was able to use AI. And I said in the recording, hey, this is Ford Saeks. I don't speak French, but I'm going to be delivering this using AI now. Please enjoy the presentation. But it was my voice. It was my mouth. It was my slides and everything for picture in picture. And they loved it. And so I couldn't have done that 3 years ago. And now, you know, I'm on TikTok and I'm watching some of the robotics that are going out. And I'm just like, it just seems like, I don't know if I fell asleep one night and it's all of a sudden here, but the technology is just advancing so quickly. And I think that where I see the future of AI is like right now we're using text-based interfaces and voice-based interfaces, but I really think it's going to start being blended into what I'm going to call sentient beings. I mean, it's not just going to be go to your computer and go to a website. It's really going to be involved in hardware and devices and throughout your, you know, your whole network of your device, your car. And I think it's really going to be important for organizations to really look at, not just, it's like Wayne Gretzky said, you know, don't go to where the puck is, go to where you know the puck is going to be. And when I look at this, and you know, every week when we're on the Monday calls on EO, I'm just looking at the advancements of how quickly people are adopting. I know I went to Phoenix and I took a Waymo taxi, which is a driverless car. And then, you know, they've had driverless cars for years, but this was really, I mean, use an app, the car showed up at the Marriott. I got in it. It took me to breakfast. And for the first 3 or 4 minutes, it was kind of freaky because we're at a 4-way stop and there's cars coming and I'm like, okay, I'm going to die. But it was more attentive than a person who's looking at their phone. Right. So I'm just excited by it. What are you excited about going forward when you look at your business and the customers you work with? What are some things that you get excited about or that you see in the future?
So there's a lot, right? And so it's also, I've noticed that me personally and people in general, we're really bad at predicting the future.
Yeah,
there's
that's
a
for
lot
sure.
of like nonlinear stuff that takes, and it's really hard to say. I can talk about what I'm excited about over the next couple of years, and it's just the AI getting better in terms of
Yeah.
context windows, in terms of what it can handle, more off the shelf type complex tasks that are involved, things that you can connect different disparate ideas and connect them together. So the AI is smart enough to know, okay, well, if I'm creating a training program, I have to know a lot about learning theory and what the best ways people learn. How do I create a prompt understanding that so I can create a proper learning program, right? Right now, you kind of have to know those pieces and put them together. I think you're going to see more of that integration. I also think global resourcing is going to be a trend, right? Because you want to go where the best talent is. And that's not always local. If you can digitize it and virtualize it, then you can go anywhere in the world. We have people that work for us in I think 6 or 7 countries right now. So
Wow.
doing different types of work. And we always pick the best talent, no matter where they are, for the amount of however much they cost, right? So that's a whole different discussion. But I think combination of that, digitization, I think you're going to see more and more of that. A lot more of like I said, like bots and dealing with like AI, but there'll be a much better experience than it is now. Right now, it's still a little clunky. It has to be really confined use cases, but it's going to explode. And there's probably a bunch of things that I'm not even realizing that are probably going to be coming out of this. You know, like I could easily see something where, you know, like you said, like if regulations get relaxed around the country, we have, you know, more wireless cars everywhere, or like driverless cars. And so, but there, you know, I know there's some technical, like physical challenges to that too. Phoenix is great because of the environment and the road structure. It's harder to do somewhere like Georgia or New York where it snows a lot and things like that. So yeah, but, you know, I think we'll start seeing more creep into real life. I'll call it real life versus just the digital world with AI and automation, robotics. It's still going to, I don't know. We'll see how far it penetrates to everyday life, but you know, like the Apple Vision, right? Sort of like a next step into immersiveness. I don't know how well that's doing. I don't know if that's actually going to stick, but I could see something like an Oculus, right? That's a temporary use for certain use cases. There's devices now in optometry that you can put an Oculus on for certain vendors and it'll do certain tests for you. So I could see more and more like going that direction with advent of AI, with cheaper technology like VR, 3D. That makes it a lot easier to produce consumer branded and low end prosumer and low end commercial products.
Yeah, I don't think AI is going to replace humans. It's going to replace humans not using AI. And I think that what we're going to see, like right now, you have to a certain level of expertise to be able to do it. But I think those barriers are quickly getting eroded as more people adopt it. It's just like when COVID hit, there were QR codes for years, right? People had QR codes for 20 years, probably. I know that I worked in the 80s for a company called Telzon. We did barcodes. We did all the inventory management systems for grocery stores. So it was a barcode. It wasn't a QR code, but it was the same thing. It was reading a code and then, creating data from it. And, you fast forward to today, it took COVID a year and a half. Everybody knows what a QR code is now. They know if you're going to eat, you're going to, and the phones now recognize them and it works. And I think that, going forward, people are already using AI. I was using AI way before, before I knew that it was AI, whether it was with Jasper or Quillbot or some of those other workflow systems that I had way before the large language models became accessible. And now, every day I see something new, and it's the people who think they're an expert on AI, I'd say, just run from them, because you don't know what you don't know. While I feel like I know a lot, I'm also humble enough to know, hey, there's a lot I don't know, which is why I love having guests like you on Fordify to share how are you applying it to real business applications. And again, we've been talking to Ankit Patel. You can check him out online, and you can go to MyBCat, MyBCat, which stands for My Business Care Team, and check him out, what he's done. And certainly I appreciate you being here today. Any closing thoughts you have for our listeners?
Yeah, let me give my process on how I determine whether it's AI or not. That might be helpful, a little nugget.
Sure, let's do it.
Hopefully people find value in it. So, I like to process map. So kind of just drawing out, what does the flow look like for something? And then depending on how geeky and detailed you want to get, there's a process called value stream mapping. But if you don't know what that is, I'll leave it high level. Just connect the dots. Like, what do I do here in this box? Okay, then I have a decision to make. Where are the decision points in this process? If you kind of map out your process like that, then go in and say, okay, where are decision points being made that are not being made well, or where are opportunities so I could speed this up, where there's a decision point that's there, or there's some sort of level of repeatability, but it's complex enough to where it's not like a formula. That's usually the best case for AI, is what I find. And I just Google it, or actually I Perplexity it now. So I go to perplexity.ai and ask it the question, hey, I'm trying to automate this with AI. What are AI applications that can do X, Y, Z for me? And I start there, go to Google, go to ChatGPT, just start doing some data dumping and start vetting out solutions to see if it would work. And that usually ends up being a great way to start. The other way is, where's your highest cost item or biggest pain point on your P&L? And then do the process map on there, and then figure out, okay, what are things that we can do to do division of labor, break it out into different parts. So different, like maybe AI takes a big portion of it, then, offshore team does another part, in-office team does another part, versus having just one person do it. Now you have a team of 3 or 4 people that can do it, both real and virtual. So looking at it from that perspective as well, how do you break it down into further components that you can subspecialize?
So it really starts with the mindset. You got to be open-minded. You got to be a critical thinker. You have to embrace technology. Then strategically, you map everything out. I know when I go into an organization to help them increase their sales, I have to do a journey map. I have to start out and say, what are all your touch points from a suspect to a prospect, to a qualified prospect, to a lead, to a qualified lead, to a customer or client. And then how do you get it through the workflow to where they become an advocate and you get, high net promoter scores and 9s and 10s, and they're actually referring you business. So I look at that whole map, and then I look at where their weak spot is. And what you're doing is the same thing in a workflow system, looking at it from an operational standpoint, mapping all that out. And now I'm going to go tactical. So we had mindset, we talked strategy. Tactically, are you using any particular software? Like for me, when I map things out, I actually use a program called FlowMap. I also use a program called Visme, and then I also use MindJet. MindJet's just a mind mapping software that allows me to think and jump from thing to thing. Are you doing any software that you found? I'm always interested in tools and tactics. Is there any system that you're using?
Yeah, I'm old school. I paid for it years ago, and I still use it as Visio.
Yep.
There's so many. There's SaaS products out there. Only reason I use Visio is because, like I said, I paid for it years ago, and it was old school. It was before SaaS came out, so I have forever license to it.
Yeah, Visio is a great program. I use that too, and it's a great program for helping you make those decisions. So, well, thank you, everybody. This is Fordify Live. We're live Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Central on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And we've been talking today to Ankit Patel from My Business Care Team and fellow EO members. So appreciate you being part of the show, and thanks for sharing such great insights.
Yeah, Ford, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Fordify Live. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the Business Growth Show podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. We air weekly at 11 a.m. Central Time. So until next week, keep pushing the boundaries and never stop growing.